to the one time back to the gods chart. I realized sometime after the last lecture that I was really out of it in a way, because I explained what each stage from the bottom up in the chart is supposed to tell you. But what I didn't say is that the top kind of God, and only the top kind, which are the pantheon gods, Athena, Apollo, Aphrodite, the people we talk about, those are gods of worlds or gods of moods. So Aphrodite being our favorite example always. She's the goddess. When she shines, everything that's important in the world is erotic and otherwise irrelevant, and that's her mood. And people can devote their whole lives to living in the light of Aphrodite. Well, that's just important to say that I really didn't explain that. And that's what the Greeks gods mean, as far as I can tell, in the Odyssey and in the Aeneid too. But that leaves me with a funny question, which I'm putting out just because I hope that maybe somebody will say something here or in office hours. I don't know if the people's the wrong thing to say, the entities in the middle level of the chart, which I called the invariants across all cultures, harvest, shelter, and hearth kind of thing, Hades, death, Poseidon, nature. What are they? They're not moods. They're not worlds. I mean, I said Poseidon is nature, Hades is death. They don't walk. I mean, Poseidon is one you can actually meet, maybe, and talk to and argue with, though I'm not sure anybody ever does. Does anybody ever confront any? I mean, the gods sort of argue among themselves, but people don't confront and get help by or hurt by directly, sort of by Poseidon, I don't think. But on the other hand, Poseidon is like the top gods, even though he's in the middle level of nature, and he's like them in that he communicates with them. They tell him when they get upset with him, and he tells them when he gets upset with them, and so forth. So what I'm asking is, I don't know whether these are gods or what they are. Demeter, Hestia, Poseidon, Hades. I've always just equated gods with moods and worlds, or cross worlds, in the case of Hermes and Athena and Zeus. So if anybody has anything to say about that, I mean, there may be just two different stories about what a god is. If there is, I don't know anything about the middle level gods, let alone the basic level powers like earth and heaven and time. Those are not gods, I'm sure. Well, I'm not. I mean, certainly in some way or weird way they are. I just don't, I need help. I mean, it's not going to destroy your understanding of the Odyssey if we can't think of why we want to call them all gods, but it sort of messes it up. But at least if you know that there's a certain kind of entity, which is one of the pantheon, one of the specific, what's Homeric gods, it's called sometimes, but it's really the special pantheon which meets on Olympus and decides things there and so forth. That's the kind of gods we understand in this course. And what to say about those other something or others? Maybe they're just powers? No, seasons aren't powers. I don't know what they are. So, yeah. Okay. Oh, I've never really sort of said it out, I think. I've sort of presume it every once in a while. Okay, a world is a bunch of things you have to say about a world. Let's take the war world, just to have a change from Aphrodite. Okay, in the war world, as in every world, there are certain practices and traditions of how to do things, and there are people who have the skill for doing them. There are roles to be had, generals and lowest level ones. I don't know what they're called in Troy, but they're in the Odyssey. But there are obviously names for them. What, anybody know? I mean, what's Agamemnon? Is he a general? I don't think that word doesn't feel right. What? Can't hear you.
He's the master general.
A master general. Well, whatever we know anyway, there are roles for people like that, for sure. So there's equipment for doing it. There's spears and such. So if you get this all together, certain practices, certain skills, certain roles, certain equipment, all interrelated, that's what I mean by a world. And I just realized I've never said this before because it's so obvious to me. On that list, something is obviously extremely missing, namely a mood. In the war world, which is the one we're talking about, Ares is constantly in a belligerent, aggressive mood. He's not going to be sort of laid back, and he's certainly, or loving or anything else. So now we've got, what, 5 maybe? Let me just try. Equipment, practices, skill, roles, and a mood. Is that what I said, finally? I think so. I didn't leave any out, did I? Okay, so now, does that help? You asked what a world is? I mean, that's, and just to make it, common sense, I'm trying, this is nothing sort of secret about this. It's just so obvious that takes a little help to know it. I know it because I read Heidegger, and Heidegger's the big guy to introduce worlds into philosophy. And when he does it, he's thinking about the business world, the theater world, the war world, the academic world. It's something we perfectly well know how to talk about. We don't talk about the Dwinell world or even the Berkeley world. They don't have the right features. But any of those things I just called business world, academic world, they have all those features. The mood, the equipment, the roles, the practices, and so forth. And so worlds are very important to human beings. They're so important, and they're so pervasive, and they so much sort of are in the background all the time. You don't relate to the business world. You relate to business things in the business world. You relate to partners and money and whatever else you have in the business world. And it's because it's so pervasive and so basic and so important that we don't see it. And there's lots to be said about it. And now back to where we were, and now talking about Aphrodite and the Homeric gods, the pantheon, how to make more sense to you. There's the Apollo world, which is now you see I wrote them up there. There's the theory world with Apollo, the hunting world with Artemis, the passion world with Aphrodite, and so forth. That's what is correlated with the gods. Okay. Is that okay? I think that's important. I'm glad you asked. Now, back to where I was. And next question is, I'm just sort of summing up important things about Homer, which we'll want to come back to later in various places in various ways in the course. One of them is how are the various worlds or lives, because there's a life that goes with the business world or the erotic world or the war world. How are these, now I'm going to switch to lives. How are these various lives related? That is, the lives of people who live in the moods and in the practices and skills of one or the other of these worlds. And what's interesting is, and I've talked about this on and off, Homer is partly basic to polytheism, namely that there are a group of gods here. What's important is that they are not ranked. There's no better worlds and worse worlds in Homer. It isn't that he denies that there's something about that. It's just that's not what he's interested in. He's not what he's thinking about. This only will really hit you when we get to Dante, because Dante is interested in ranking everything. It's just anything that he brings up, he tells you where in the hierarchy from bad to good it fits. And so even when you get to saints, which are clearly ranked higher than sinners in Dante, You've got a whole ranking of about, I don't know, 8 or 10 kinds of sinners in paradise, and they each have their seating plan in which they are laid out in which ones are nearer to God and not. But that's just the opposite of Homer. Homer doesn't ask himself that kind of question. And so I mentioned last time already, so the Phaeacians can say that they're as near to God as the sun, to the gods who come and have dinner with them, than the Cyclops, which is just amazing. The most extremely civilized ones, the Phaeacians, who have the best sports, the best technology, the best artistic stuff, and so forth, they're just perfect. And the Cyclopses are the total clots. They're nothing. They have no civilization. They don't have any community. All they have is cheese and wine and sheep. And they are equal as far as Homer's concerned. I've talked about that a little, but I don't think I've ever talked about this. And then there are the difference between the warrior world, which is Achilles is the shining example, in a human being, and Ares is the god of it. There's something like the opposite of Achilles' world, which is this laid-back, cultivated, drugged. I mean, remember Helen puts drugs in their drinks. Wine isn't enough. And that laid-back world of Menelaus, which is doesn't take risks, isn't out there fighting, and so forth. But he's just as good. He does a great job of having good banquets, good opium, and so forth. And he's no nearer or farther from the immortal gods than Achilles. And so he doesn't take any risks, and he doesn't put have any anxiety. If they had any anxiety, they would immediately, they meaning him and Helen, in their happy, laid-back state, that's where the drugs come in, the bottom of 59, it entered Helen's mind to drop into the wine that they were drinking an anodyne, mild magic of forgetfulness. Whoever drank this mixture in the wine bowl would be incapable of tears that day, though he lose his mother and father both, and so forth. That's the kind of opiate that Zeus's daughter, namely Helen, has got. And now the question is, how do I know that they all are equal? Well, we know the Phaeacians say that they're equal to the Cyclopses, but it's interesting to see what happens to Achilles, and that gets us to talking about what's going on in the underworld. And I'm sort of setting you up for that. And the reason we care about what goes on in the underworld is because Virgil, which we don't read, I used to have him in the course, but he hasn't quite made the grade anymore. But Virgil took from Homer a detailed description of what was going on in the underworld, and Dante took it from Virgil, and you'll see Virgil being Dante's guide through the underworld, and that looks like it's beginning to make some kind of ranking. But I want to say that in Homer, it's not. It's everybody gets in the underworld, and Dante sort of tries to follow this, but he wavers a lot. But you'll see they ought to, in this picture, when they die, go on having the sort of life they had when they were alive, so that it doesn't matter much that they're dead. And the perfect example of that is Menelaus. He's just as passive, disembodied, and laid back after he's dead as he was when he's alive. And when on 69, he's told what's going to happen to him, in the middle of the last chunk, about 600 in the margin of 69. As to your destiny, Prince Menelaus, you shall not die. You shall not die in the bluegrass land of Argos. Rather, the gods intend you for Elysium with golden Rhadamanthus at the world's end. I don't know what all this is. I don't know if anybody knows. But whatever it is, it's another sort of laid-back life it's a dream of ease, where existence is a dream of ease, and there's only mild air, and there's never snow, and so forth. And that's what's going to happen to him, and he's not going to miss anything. If anything, it just gets better. But there's a big problem about Achilles. I mean, Achilles doesn't seem to be having the same life after he's dead. When he's alive, he has only two features sort of that are mainly his. One is that he's such a great runner and fighter that he actually shines when he's out there. He is just the best. And he's also the moodiest person. And how many have read the Iliad? The first line of the Iliad is, "Sing goddess the wrath of Achilles." Achilles is so upset that he's trying to kill Agamemnon right at the start of the Iliad. And then he goes into such a funk of unhappiness that he won't fight at all. And then for years, and everybody's all upset. But the main thing is, he's this mixture of shining hero-ness and passionate moods. And what about him? What's it like for him in the afterlife? So let's think about that. And it's important to realize that Achilles, you probably know this. I don't think Homer ever tells us this, but Achilles was mother is a god, is a demigod. Theseus, is that her name? Not exactly, something like that. Anyway, his mother is given how is it? He's given by his mother the choice between an active, brilliant superhero life and early death in battle, or a Menelaus-like life, a long, happy life with his family and totally free of danger and violence and so forth. And Achilles chooses the short and glorious life where people will sing of him. So what happens when they come across him in the underworld? Well, and how are we going to rank him? And how are we going to? He's going to be miserable. Where are we? I've lost him. Okay, let's see. I was on 69. That's Menelaus. We're now in the underworld. Help me find what happened to Achilles. But where are you? 303. 203. Okay. Okay, here it is. Odysseus is in the underworld. These various people are coming up. And who should come up but Achilles. And now where are we? Well, I jumped in at the end of it. We have to start at the beginning. On 201. Line 580. Yes, that's just where I opened it now. Good. Okay. And first, at the top of 201, Odysseus says what everybody says about Achilles, but you need to read this to know. Was there ever a man more blessed by fortune than you, Achilles? Can there ever be? We ranked you with the immortals in your lifetime, we Argives did, and here your power is royal among the dead men's shade. Now, what's Achilles going to say about that? Well, it's really interesting. He says, now skipping down, let me hear no smooth talk of death from you, Odysseus, light of counsels. Better, I say, to break sod as a farmhand for some poor countryman on iron rations than lord it over all the exhausted dead. And so Odysseus seems to be saying he made the wrong choice. It's better to be alive, even if you're just a farmhand, than dead in this weak world where you're just literally ghosts of your former self. And if he had it to do over again, he would choose that. Well, that's interesting. That seems to rank the short, glorious life below the farmer life. And I mean, I worried about that. But it turns out Homer's got a brilliant solution to his problem. He's got to both argue that the short and glorious life, let me just put my cards on the table. What he thinks is the short and glorious life is terrific, And, but it's no better, but it has its trade-off. It's terrific, but when you're dead, you're all unhappy for the rest of eternity, because it's a kind of life that you can't go on living after you die the way Menelaus can go on living his. So there's a kind of trade-off. And what Homer comes out saying is, gee, it is an amazingly good life while you're alive, and by that very fact, an amazingly bad life once you're dead. And he manages that way by showing that it has its advantages and disadvantages to keep it from being simply ranked as the best life or simply ranked as the worst life. Now he needs to show you that though Achilles has said, in effect, he wishes he were dead, he hasn't given up the value of being a great fighter that people sing about. That happens next. He asks in the middle of 201, and what news of the prince, my son? Did he make a name in battle? And then comes on page 202, they were telling how great his son performed very top of 202, when we formed against the Trojan line, he never hung back in the mass, but ranged far forward of his troops. No man could touch him for gallantry. Scores went down before him in hard fights, man to man. And a little more down, what a champion his lance ran through, and then, that's some of the people he killed. And more when they raided Prime City and so forth. So, and enough of that. He was told that was it Neoptolemus? Neoptolemus. Anyway, that's the son of Achilles, had a great life by the standards of great fighters and great heroes. And what's interesting about that is it shows that Achilles hasn't given up believing that that's a very good life, even when he knows that he can't enjoy it after he's dead, and that's going to happen to his son too. So the trade-off is that, but it's great to be glorious, even when it makes you miserable when you're dead. It's no better or worse than being laid back and happy all the time, and always having that happiness, which is the Menelaus version. So you hear at the top of 203, at the bottom of 202 to start, but I said no more. Achilles, Odysseus is talking. But I said no more, for he, that is Achilles, had gone off striving the field of Asphodel, the ghost of our great runner, Achilles, Achaedes, glorying in what I told him of his son. So I think it's a wonderful example of Homer not drawing the conclusion, well, you see, you shouldn't lead this kind of glorious life because look how you're going to feel after you're dead. And so, or saying, once you've got a glorious life like this, even if you're dead, it doesn't matter. He's just interested in one more life, and not judging which is better or worse, but just telling you that it has its good possibilities and its trade-offs of bad possibilities. And I think that's all I want to say about that. I had a list of others. Another nice one, where you see two lives, which you could be tempted to say, and Dante would certainly say, which one was better than which one. Homer's always happy to just tell you what's good about each one and what the drawbacks are in each one. On 87, we passed over it sort of, but we didn't really notice it. When Calypso says, "Stay with me," he says, "No, I'm going home to Penelope." He says in the middle of 87, "My lady goddess, here is no cause for anger. My quiet Penelope, how well I know, would seem a shade before your majesty. Death and old age being unknown to you, or she must die. Yet it is true, each day I long for home, long for the sight of home." So again, they're just two different moods, There's the homesick mood and the stay with Calypso mood. He's been in the stay with Calypso mood for 8 years, and now he's over that. He's in the go home to Penelope mood, but he's not saying one is better than the other. One is an immortal, and that's a pretty interesting thing to be. Another is a human being, and that's a great thing to be too. So that's all. I can't say more about it than that. I hope you get a feeling for it. It's something that we're very unlikely to do. We think more or less that you ought to be able to rank lives in which ones are better and which ones are worse. But there's one way to put what Homer hasn't got is some standard on which to rank lives. Like you might want to know which one is most free and responsible, or which one is most safe, and or which one is most peaceful, or which one is most enlightened. But each one of those is a standard within its own world. Being peaceful, being enlightened, being creative, and so forth. But there's no way to compare across worlds in Homer's story, because each of these worlds has more or less of, say, enlightenment in it. But how are you going to compare the Enlightenment world to, say, the detached theory of Apollo world that does science and music and so forth? You can't, Homer says. Okay. Now, I'll stop for a minute. That's my first aria on the underworld and the kind of comparison of lives that Homer's interested in, or I better say not interested in. Go ahead.
In Homer ranked this lifestyle over, for example, the shooters or the shit. But he made a distinction between characters like the Discus or like Lemons who have honor and act a certain way.
Terrific. Yes, absolutely. I was going to get to that next. That's wonderful when you're with it and ahead of it, the story. Yes, though you can't rank the worlds in terms of their content, that is, whether it to be an Aphrodite type person or an Aries type person or a tech type person like hepatitis and so forth, Homer's got no way and no interest in ranking them. But he can rank the, so to speak, whole quality of a life. There is something that goes across the various lives, and he can tell you in a general way what is a good life and what is a bad life. And that's just what you were saying. And you're right that I haven't said it. And now where would we look for an example of a kind of life which he will condemn as a bad life? You see, it won't have the kind of content of saying, well, is it erotic? Is it aggressive? Is it so and so? But it will have a certain style or something which he will say is bad, bad, bad. Yeah, that's right. And who shows that? Yeah, the suitors. We're back to the bad guys. The suitors are condemned, and they're condemned for not having any sense of gratitude or appreciation of the values of the culture, but they just selfishly and freely, autonomously, meaning that they just make up their own rules for how to live, and that's bad. What's good? Well, just the opposite, as he's implying. Being receptive to the call of the gods, seeing the shining of the gods and letting that draw you to behave in certain ways, so that's the good thing, and the bad thing is acting totally on your own free choice, and when you do that, what you end up doing is satisfying your desires and going against the tradition and against the gods, and that's bad. Okay, yeah. It's saying we condemn. It's the same. I didn't hear all. Say it again. Yeah, to our current story. Is that what you're saying? The what? To our society. Well, yes and no. Mostly no, because and what's interesting is it's the exact upside down of our society. What we praise namely people freely and rationally choosing to do things and thereby to satisfy their desires with a lot of restrictions. You can't hurt other people. You have to treat them all as ends and never as means. But within these things that you shouldn't do, the more you can freely take over your life, act in a way that you can explain to yourself and others is a rational thing to do, that's good. Whereas and that's sort of easy for us to understand, because you're right, that is how we think. And that's how all the people who read the Odyssey think. That's what I was having fits about a few lectures back, when the critics say that Helen is just a woman who loves too much, who is giving in to all her passions and her desires and not taking responsibility for it. The critics all say, you see, that shows that Homer doesn't understand what is morally valuable. So, and the point is, Homer, and that's why Homer's so interesting, is completely the reverse. The bad guys are the ones who are free, who take responsibility, who choose what to do and don't care about the tradition, and no gods shine on them, and they have no gratitude. They don't go around sacrificing lots of animals. They just go around eating lots of animals, so that's important. When Homer gets to the level where he does have judgments about good and bad, they are exactly the reverse of our judgments. And what I'm sort of wanting to say is, and I'd better just say it, it may well be that Homer's got something right, that there's something about being open to what calls you, which gives you a life full of meaning and seriousness. Whereas if you are just free and responsible to choose how to rationally satisfy your desires without hurting anybody, that's a rather boring life. So you should let yourself be carried away by the gods, he thinks. The modern responsibility person would say, no, you can't. You've got to take responsibility for your life. You can't just because all of a sudden everything looks erotic, run off with your friend's wife. And the big difference there. And the interesting to ask yourself is, which life is more meaningful, more serious, more satisfying, the one that we think or the one that Homer thought? And I just got to say these things. And you've got to be sensitive to see what's going on. The critics don't see that Homer's describing not just a childish, privative, not immature form of life. He's describing another way of life, which is as good as, or maybe better in the sense of being meaningful and serious, than the one that we naturally assume. See, you're my favorite straight man over there. So yes, you want to say something?
Are there any characters in the book developing the way the suitors are to be decided?
Are there any in the book that what?
And that is the way the suitors are to.
Somebody tell me. Ah, good. Let's ask for that. Does anybody besides Homer? Well, there's a prophet who says to the suitors, if you don't shape up, you're going against the tradition, you're not showing the gratitude that you're supposed to show to the gods and so forth, you're going to get into trouble for this. The prophet says it. I don't know if anybody else says it or not. When somebody does freely do something that people say when they read this, well, there's something wrong with these people. They're so immature that they don't take responsibility for anything. They always just say the gods did it. That's what these humanist, smug critics say that I read you some of way back in the first lecture. Well, there's a famous example. I was going to look for it, but I couldn't find it in a hurry, where somebody does take responsibility. Homer's not against taking responsibility for what you do. He just doesn't think it's as important as responding to a kind of calling which leads you to do something passionately, like Ares and Aphrodite do. But there's a place where when they're all... How many are finished with the Odyssey by now? I hope. Lots of hands. Oh boy. How many are in the middle of the Odyssey at this point? Well, how many haven't ever heard of the Odyssey? Oh, this is upsetting. Okay. Well, if whatever, stop reading where you are and read this for next time. Otherwise, you're just going to be out of it and missing a lot of fun. I can't tell you more. But in the meantime, there's a place, keep your eyes open when you get toward the end. Odysseus is fighting the suitors. The night before, they've locked up all the shields and swords and stuff so that the suitors at least don't all have weapons and spears, so that Telemachus and Odysseus can have a chance at least of killing them all, because they are mostly undefended, were supposed to be mostly undefended. Well, somebody left the door open to the storeroom where they were supposed to lock up all the shields and spears. And guess who did it? Telemachus did it. And when Odysseus says, who did this? It must have been one of the servants. And look at this, how they're undermining what we're doing. And Telemachus says, no, I'm sorry, Dad, I did it. And that's it. And Odysseus doesn't go into a fit and say, when will you ever shape up? And it's doing your responsible okay thing is an okay way to do things. But it's not of interest to Homer at all. But it's enough for us to see that it's just wrong that these people are that Homer people are like children who don't have any sense of responsibility and don't take any responsibility. Telemachus takes the responsibility. Okay, I'm going back to my notes. I don't see any people, of course, if nobody's reading it, that's not a good thing. I don't know, what do you do in discussion sections if you haven't done the reading? Please do the reading for your own good and for everybody else's good. Okay, where are we? Let's see now. Okay, now that's interesting. Now we want to know what unifies. Now I'm off in my own stuff. That I don't know anybody who worries about this and says the kind of things I'm about to say, and they're pretty far-fetched, but I think they're right. Okay, we want to know. I want to know what unifies a life when moods are what's important. Don't you just sort of get sucked into? I mean, what unifies Helen's life when after being a perfect wife and mother, she's zapped off to being the special sort of trophy wife of Paris and Troy, and then zapped back to being the perfect hostess in Menelaus's castle or whatever you call where he lives. And it looks like there's not any kind of connection between these various lives, the various moods. When you're in one mood, remember I said it's like the weather. Everything looks like it's in that mood. There's no place, it looks like, for connecting it to a life you had which was totally filled with some other mood. You're hardly the same person. Well, what's interesting, I wish it were more general, but there's one case anyway of something in which you can be intensely in one mood while having another mood, or at least another. You can be intensely in one life while having another kind of life on the horizon of what you're doing, which is not what you're doing, but gives more significance to what you're doing and helps you. Yeah, never mind the unity issue. I think I said that too soon. Just this. Well, let me give you the example I'm thinking. It's a case in which when you're leading one kind of life, another kind of life is something which you also understand and which is in the background of what you're doing. That's when you're doing, it must seem interesting to you and obvious that these people care a lot of the soldiers, which we hear a lot about, and the heroes and the warriors care a lot about the fact that they're going to be sung about at banquets. And we get a case of it where, I think it's the Phaeacian banquet, where the harper sings about the battle at Troy. And so when they fight, so the people who are sitting at home at their banquet singing about their previous great warriors is in, so to speak, in the back of their mind, and they fight because they see this other aspect of what they're doing. They are totally absorbed in the fighting, it looks like, totally absorbed in the mood, and yet the way the thing is set up, they have a sense of this other aspect of what they're doing. And the same with the people at the banquets. They're listening to the stories of Troy and so forth, but they have a sense of what they would do if they're the battling type, if they were called into fighting the war. So in the background of each of these lives, the warrior life and the Menelaus laid back at home life, there is this connection that the other one is in the background. And I think that gives a certain kind of unity to their world, because these things can come out of the background and be in the main thing when they go out to war, and then they go back into the background and become the main thing when they come home and go to their banquets. That's an interesting way of structuring a life. Now, there's more to that, but let me read what I catch up with where I am. Well, with Odysseus anyway, we should just point out, because it goes by very fast, that he's not only a warrior and a lover and a husband. This is his James Bond side again. And he does all those things, and a boxer and a runner, and he does all of those things at their best. That's all so, but he also has another occupation in which, again, you get the foreground and the background phenomena. He's a raider. I mean, he's a pirate. His main occupation, when he's not at war, and there's plenty of times when he's not, is to go and steal everybody else's sheep and cattle. And this goes by pretty fast, but on 440. And when he does it for the people at home, so they're in the back of his mind. And the people at home know that he's out raiding around to get them more goodies. At the bottom of 440, he says to Penelope on line 400, "Take care of what's left me in our house. As to the flocks, that pack of wolves laid waste," those are the suitors, of course, "they'll be replenished. Scores I'll get on raids, and other scores our island friends will give me till all the folds are full again." So he's got this sort of interesting structure to his life that remember, on his island, there's a special tree, an olive tree, and he's built his bed in which that olive tree is one of the bedposts. And around that is his castle. And around that is his island. And he's rooted here. And he always comes back to here. When that's not in the foreground, that's in the background. And he can go out from here on these raids and come back this way and out and come back that way. That's a pretty well organized life. And okay, that's so much for just realizing that there's the raider life, which has on its background sometimes the warrior life and sometimes the head of the castle life, and not to mention the life that he got wrapped up in with Calypso and so forth. And they are all sort of reflect the other ones and gives him a kind of unity. Now, there's one thing I want to tell you that I don't understand at all, because I know that someday some student, hopefully who has never read a word from the humanists and therefore can see things in the Odyssey that the humanists can't see because they've been saying the same thing for 1,000 years. Anyway, I count on one of you, or maybe even me, who knows, to figure out what goes on 188. Something so peculiar. And I don't know anybody that writes about it, but I don't claim to know much of the literature about this. If you come across, and you podcast people, I expect you to help too. And if any of you have an answer to this, or if you come across somebody who's writing about this, let me know. Here's the thing, on 188, 189. The last thing that Odysseus is going to do before he dies is very important, I bet, and very bizarre, and I don't know what's going on. At the bottom of 188, after you have dealt out death in open combat or by stealth to all the suitors, go overland on foot and take an oar until one day you come to where men have lived with meat unsalted and never known the sea, nor sea-going ships, and so forth and so forth. The spot will be plain to you because some passerby will say, what winnowing fan is that you have on your shoulder? And that, of course, is his oar. They don't know what oars are. They only know what winnowing for wheat is, because they are totally inland, totally cultivating the earth people. And what is he supposed to do? He says, the prophet who's telling him this, I think it's Tiresias. Yes, Tiresias, it says at the top of 188, tells him, what is he going to do? He plants his oar there. Halt and implant your smooth oar in the turf and make fair sacrifices to Poseidon and turn back and so forth. And then what will happen to him? A good thing. Wearied out with rich old age, your country folk in blessed peace around you. That's how he's going to die, at the center in his bed. And then I say, see page 438. I have no idea what's happening on 438. It just says again, the death will drift upon you from seaward, mild as air, mild as your hand. In my well-tendered, this is him repeating what he heard from Tiresias. In my well-tempered weariness of age, contented folks around me on our island. And he said, all this is to come. And that's, what in the world is he doing? He's got to somehow, I don't know, he's got to be so cross-world that he can, I'm just guessing or trying, that he can see another world totally different than any world he's ever seen, and somehow relate to it, and period. That's as far as I can get. But if you were in the business, and it's further than I ever got it before, so that's not, if you're in the business of a cross-world culture, where the Hermes is going between worlds of, remember, of birth and death and health and sickness and youth and age and so forth. And Athena is going between worlds, getting Odysseus in sync with them. And Zeus is the protector of strangers. If for some reason you live in a culture in which getting in sync with lots of worlds is the highest thing you can do, and the highest God's job is to protect these strangers who get in sync with other worlds, he's got the ultimate sync with the ultimate other world when he goes to a world that never seen the sea. And instead of rowing with his oar, he plants his oar. He goes completely over to agricultural world. And that's just, I guess, it's in a culture in which everybody's interested in seeing new worlds. And the ultimate, he's seen a world sort of newer than anybody ever saw before. I don't know if that's right. I have no idea what it is going on there. Somebody give me some guesses. Come to office hours and tell me what you think. So Odysseus lives fully in one world or one way of life at a time. Again, domestic, adventurers, warriors, lovers, and so forth. And he goes out and visits all the world he can. And while he's doing this, the other worlds are on the horizon of the world that he's in. Now let's see where we get. So as I just wrote to myself here, when there's one world in the foreground, there's other worlds in the background, lending meaning and seriousness to whatever the world is in. Now comes the interesting question, how does Homer express this literarily? This doesn't really add to what I'm trying to say as the philosophical issues, but I can't resist it because it's so wonderfully sophisticated of Homer to do what he's about to do. He wants to, let's suppose, express the way that there are always these worlds in the background and worlds in the foreground, and he wants to express the way that the adventure world has the home bed always in the background, and the home bed always has the adventure bed always in the background, so that you never are, if you're this kind of cross-world person, completely taken over by any mood. I think the people who, like Aphrodite, are completely taken over by moods. I don't think their life has any continuity. Remember, I started talking about how many different lives Helen had, and then I sort of changed the subject because I was trying to illustrate unity, and what I was finding is diversity. I think the people who plunge completely into one mood and then completely into another mood and completely into another mood are fine, and Homer thinks they're great, and there's a God for each of them. And then there are these people who keep all these various worlds in the background and plunge into one, but never fully give themselves over to anyone. The most extreme thing is Odysseus saying, I never fully gave myself over to Calypso, even though he spent 8 years with her. He still had Penelope on the horizon, so to speak. That's an interesting, really rich, complicated form of life. And now, how does Homer deal with it? Well, let me stop for a minute again, because I've now gone on through another bunch of stuff without any questions. Tyler, you want to say something?
Do you want to say that the world on the horizon or world is the background of another world? Do you want to say that they can't come into conflict?
The two worlds.
There's a plurality of worlds, plurality of gods, and Bishop Daniel's one which sort of harmonizing, except one is on the horizon of the other, and the background of the other. So it looks as if the polytheism of Homer includes conflict. They can't come into conflict because they're sort of mutually supporting.
That sounds right. I think I haven't thought about that, but yes, let's think the banquet people certainly aren't going to come into conflict with the warrior people, but they're mutually supporting. And again, it looks like Odysseus with Calypso is not going to become a barrier to Penelope, because eventually Penelope will be there, and he'll tell her about the Calypso episode. And what do you want to conclude?
I see that level of culture. It might be a culture that says it's plurality in many ways of life.
Good. Let's say that again, just because I see how important that is for where we are in the course. Yes, they're a culture in which these worlds are all there. They support each other. You don't try to make any one of them sort of the best and make the other the bad guy. There are these bad guys, but they're not in worlds and so forth. So the worlds all support each other. That's right. Even though they seem very opposed, like the Phaeacians and the Cyclops or so forth. Yeah, go ahead. And what follows? That's right.
I see the worlds support each other in some global sense.
Yeah.
5 minutes will wake up.
Yeah, right.
Why? The people lost range of thinking. I don't see how they don't come in conflict. How is it that when this is you out and do the adventure of thing and still come home?
Well, I mean, maybe that's the wrong thing to ask. How is it? That's the kind of world they've got. That's the view of emotions that they've got. There isn't any how it is. I mean, there isn't any question behind how it is. That's how it is. They don't, but it's important to see how interesting that is. It isn't as if they're dilettantes. It isn't really like James Bond, sort of just going from adventure to adventure to adventure. They are seriously involved in each of these worlds. I think that's the 8 years with Calypso is so important, because you come to a shock to see how involved he is with this goddess, and that's the Homeric world. It's a wonderful world, and maybe it's an impossible world. It's certainly, if you start with a story that you should be faithful to your wife, or that you expect your wife to be faithful to you, but you don't have to be faithful to her, which seems to be more the setup in the Odyssey. You can get a culture in which, and somehow Penelope doesn't seem to be minding that Odysseus went out and did all these things. That's sort of to his credit. But there's something deep, but that's why I wanted to repeat it. Keep your eyes open immediately for what's happening in the Oresteia. I'll give you a kind of preview so that you can think of some, how am I going to jump into this? Let me think a minute. Well, let's get a mood or an emotion that's completely absent from the Odyssey, which you couldn't just integrate as one more happy mood or one more happy world. What might that be? And to put it another way, there is a mood that's important that Homer manages to completely suppress, ignore, deny in the Odyssey. And that's very interesting and very important and has in the end very bad consequences, except that in the end it turns out all right. But I can't tell you more without your reading until you're reading Aeschylus. But I do want to tell you this much more. We have to talk about it a minute. There is an emotion, a very important emotion, which Homer just doesn't like, and he just doesn't get it. He just denies it. And that is vengeance, or what else can we call it? I think it's revenge. The mood of revenge could be a very important mood. It's a sort of mafia mood. It's you kill one of ours, and we're going to kill one of yours. And it's a mood that's very dangerous to the culture, because every subgroup in every family is killing off members of the other family. And Homer writes as if that doesn't happen in his happy Odyssey, in Ithaca, and so forth. There are five, and now we have to say, and who, has anybody read far enough to know who is the gods or goddesses of this mood of revenge? Well, it's the Furies. You've got to keep your eyes open. The Furies take care of, if anybody hurts my family, then I'm going to hurt their family. Yeah.
It's the slaughter of the cedars, not revenge.
Ah, wow. That's very important. I think that's why people don't like book 24 of the Odyssey. The Odyssey just, and this is Homer again, refusing to face the fact that all the relatives of all the suitors are going to go back and try to kill him and his relatives. That's revenge, right? And it looks as if Homer just denies it, and he does. All of a sudden, Athena comes on the scene in the 24th book and says, "Enough of this fighting, period." And that just stops the revenge cycle. Okay, yeah, go ahead. You're on the right track. Ah, I see. Oh, good. Yeah, was his mood revenge? No. That's interesting. His mood, you'll see, have you read that far yet? His mood is protect his property. I mean, it's not that he's trying to sort of kill them personally for something personal that they've done. They haven't, raped his wife and so forth. They've eaten all his cattle, drunk all his wine, and they've seduced the serving girls, and he's claiming back his property. I don't know how I need help. I mean, you're on the right track. I need to understand better why that doesn't count as revenge. I'm sure it doesn't, but I don't know how. Yeah, Erica.
Surely you could just kick them all out at that point instead of killing them. It seems like killing them is excessive. I don't know how to explain that except by thinking of it as vengeful.
I don't think it's vengeful. I don't think he could have kicked them all out. I mean, how would he kick them out? Sort of, with a boot in the butt, one by one. I mean, what's going to make them go away? They outnumber him completely. I don't think, if he wants his property back and his wife back, don't think there's any solution but to kill them. You don't find him as he kills them saying, "And that'll serve you right. And take that." He just goes around butchering them, and then he hangs all the servant girls, and he does it all with just as if this is how you have to do it if you're going to clean up the stables, I think. But we should talk about that. I think you're going to say more. Go ahead.
It seems just as plausible to me that you could kick them all out as that you could kill them all, severely outnumbered as limited as.
Well, that's asking the wrong sort of thing. After all, he's got Athena on his side, and he's Odysseus, the wiliest of all people, and he's hidden most of. Well, I don't think so, because I think they would keep coming back through the back doors and through the windows, and you'd never get rid of them like termites. But anyway, let's hear other people's opinion. Yeah. Oh, really? Do they? Wow, that's one for you. Wow. Well, you show me that passage. Eric is on the track of something. I still don't think it's revenge, but you make life harder, that's sure. Yes.
Leave his house and like, what would he be if he takes that out and does not?
Say it again?
What kind of like honor would Odysseus have as king? He just kicks them out and doesn't run from it.
You mean as a king, it's his job. It's his job to kill them. I like that. You came in just in time. I hadn't any more weapons up my sleeve. But yes, you could say that it belongs to his role. Just as when you start reading the Oresteia, all this is really relevant to the Oresteia. It turns out that it belongs to Agamemnon's role as king to have to kill his daughter. The reason is that, I mean, that's what kings have to do in a certain situation, which poor Agamemnon has gotten into. Okay, I can't say more about that yet. It's too early. Yeah, go ahead.
Just gonna say where the suitors say that we'll be property.
Okay, well, let's look at that. I think that's interesting. Seems like an important paper topic. What page on the book? 410, okay. See, you do learn something more every day. I never noticed this line, but it's important now, it turns out. Where is this line? Okay. If you are Odysseus of Ithaca, come back. All that you say these men have done is true. Who's talking? Okay, has done his true rash actions, many here, more in the countryside, but here he lies, the man who caused them all, Antinous. They're trying to blame the leader. He was the ringleader, he whipped us on to do these things, he cared less for a marriage than for the power Coronians gave him, has denied him as king of Ithaca. For that he tried to trap your son and would have killed him. They tried to kill Telemachus. He is dead now and has his portion. Spare your own people. As for yourself, we'll make restitution of wine and meat consumed, and add each one a tithe of 20 oxen, with gifts of bronze and gold to warm your heart. Meanwhile, we cannot blame you for your anger. Well, that's already that he's angry is interesting. Odysseus glowered under his black brows. He's angry, all right. Now, what's he going to say in response? I'm going to have to go on reading this. Now, not for the whole treasure of your fathers or all you enjoy in lands and flocks and so forth would I hold my hand. There will be killing till the score is paid. That sounds... Yeah, it sounds like revenge, doesn't it? You force yourself upon this house, fight your way out, or run for it if you think you'll escape death. I doubt one man of you skins by. I still think it's not revenge. But the reason, I mean, this is very interesting what we're on to, because the answer to whether it's revenge or not is going to be in the Oresteia. The Oresteia is all about revenge, and I've got to see how it relates to okay, I have to tell you what I'm thinking, although I haven't got any good evidence for it yet. I think that Homer has repressed the Furies in the Odyssey. I mean, that's pretty clear. They are complaining that the Homeric gods have stuck them under the ground and don't respect them and so forth. They complain for pages and pages. It gets rather boring. But they are very, very unhappy because the goddesses of revenge have been eclipsed or thrown out or something by the new pantheon. And if they keep blaming the pantheon for repressing them. So now we've got a double, and the Furies are mentioned only 5 times, and just in passing in the Odyssey. I can give you the page numbers next time. And when Homer mentions them, he always calls them the loathsome Furies. Homer hates revenge. That much is sort of clear. If he keeps calling them loathsome Furies, the Furies are the goddesses of revenge, there's no doubt. Now I'm trying to spell out, see, my intuition is, here's Odysseus, the shining hero, and he's not being directed by the Furies. And Homer doesn't even like the Furies, so this can't be a case of revenge. That's what I'm thinking. Though it sure looks like one. I see that's what you're thinking. Yeah. Has what? He has this inner ability to cry inwardly, and not in his eyes stay like stone. Yeah.
source of inner, so maybe this revenge doesn't necessarily have to come from theory, but instead from his own sense of inner events.
Well, I mean, if Homer wrote this book, if Homer wants to say that, he should have said that. I mean, it looks like he's angry. I mean, I think anger might be the right word somehow, whereas the Furies, that might, something important might happen here. The Furies are the goddesses of revenge. If somebody hurts your family, you have to hit them back. That's a kind of vengeance. And how is that related to anger? If somebody destroys your property, you hit them back. What is Homer trying to repress when he talks about the loathsome Furies? And what happens when you repress them in a culture and deny that they exist, which is certainly what Homer is doing? Then you get to Athens, something like 500 years later, and the Furies have been repressed more and more as people get more and more into reading Homer and thinking this is the guideline like we read the Bible, or did at one point anyway. And the Furies get more and more upset. This is all very interesting territory. So what should you be asking yourself? How is vengeance related to anger? How is it related to property? How can Homer deny that there is such a thing as anger and vengeance? And how can he get away with it, or can he get away with it? This is all fascinating. But I see your hand, but I've seen some hands I haven't seen before. I want you first. Okay, we'll get there. We'll to you. Yeah.
I think the concept of vengeance is a bit problem with the concept of the numeric world, because everything in Homer's world is predetermined. So from the beginning that the Twitters will die. I can't recall any specific example, but that being continuously sets up these people die for what they're doing. And when Odysseus questions that, she says there's nothing to question about if they are going to die. And the way I see it is that if you know that they're going to die, then it's not really vengeance, because the point of vengeance would be that you would have to kill them, and it would be kind of I killed you.
No. We'd have to talk about this in office hours. There is a level of describing it from Zeus's point of view, where he knows how it's all going to turn out, that the suitors are going to be killed. But there's another level of describing it where it's really Odysseus has decided to do it, and at every moment it's still up for grabs. And then every once in a while Athena has to come in and sort of save him from when twice there are 6 people throwing 6 spears at him, and only thanks to Athena do they diverge all over and don't kill him. So I don't think it helps to say that from a certain perspective, Homer knows, we know, everybody knows that they're going to die. That doesn't change the question how risky it is that Odysseus is doing it, under what motive is Odysseus doing it, what does Homer think about revenge, and is this revenge? That just denies all the level of interestingness and puts it all in a level of uninteresting predeterminedness. I'm sorry, there's still one more person. We just got time for you, and then you. Okay.
Maybe being not revenge, and he would have left the parallel world when one turns to moving on to like the whole world from Turkey.
Okay. So I need somebody to talk. Tell me what you just said. Can anybody hear her enough to be able to repeat it to me? I want to hear what you said. Somebody tell me what she said.
Suitors mark the end of the warrior world and a transition into the home world.
No. There's at least the Raider world coming still. But I don't think it does. This is just one more great war. It's as if there's going to be other great wars. And in fact, we know no, we don't know. I was thinking maybe Achilles' son is fighting in a different war, but I think he's fighting in the same one. Okay, you get the last word.
If Homer doesn't like revenge, then why is Orestes glorified by both the men of the Greek society and the gods alike?
Well, that's interesting. It's interesting how little Orestes gets talked about, but he does get talked about, and he's a model for Telemachus to live up to, because Orestes kills his father, his mother, and her lover, and what? And Orestes does it, I'm trying to think, out of vengeance, out of anger. Orestes does it motivated by the Furies. So it is whatever the Furies are, and Homer's unhappy about the fact that Orestes does it in the name of the Furies, and he doesn't say so, I think. We got to go back and look. Now a puzzle. I'll do it for you. Go back and look at the 5 times that the Furies are mentioned. Or no, that Orestes killing Aegisthus is mentioned, and see whether it's done in the name of the Furies or not. In Homer, in Aeschylus, it's done in the name of the Furies. Okay, we made a transition. We're going to go on to Aeschylus next time. So read up to page 66. Okay,